Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Kshitij Srivastava, Head of Department of Prosthodontics, Sardar Patel Postgraduate Institute of Dental and Medical Science from Lucknow. Before we begin with our pre-conference course, I would like to firstly congratulate our patrons, Dr. Rangarajan sir and Dr. Padmanabhan sir. At the same time, the entire organizing committee, thanks to Dr. Jayashree Mohan, Dr. Venkat Krishnan, Dr. Sridharan, and Dr. Reddy. Thank you so much. And lastly, but not the least, the organizing committee headed by Dr. Abraham. Thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this IPS conference. Thank you so much. Now, before we begin with our course is basically about loading the unloaded, where we'll be talking about loading protocols for implants. I would like to introduce my entire team. As I told you about myself, I would also like to introduce my next speaker. That would be Dr. Abhinav Shekhar. He's a professor in our department, followed by Dr. Lav Kumar Bhatia. He's a reader. And Dr. Anshuman Chaturvedi, he's also a reader in our department. Now, before we all begin, as we all know that there is a tremendous need or a rise in implants of lately. Now, patients today are more informed of the procedure. They come up to you with very high expectations. And in fact, they gather information about which is the best implant and how to go forward. Nowadays, people in fact will come to you whether you want what kind of a crown also. Now, with the increase or the rise in demand of these patients and their expectations, we are in a position where we prosthodontists, I would say, are in a better position as compared to other fields of dentistry to suggest them an exact treatment plan, because our treatment plan has to be prosthetically driven. The implantology has to be, or always has to be, prosthetically driven. In fact, they demand results with a highly functional aesthetic and in the fewest number of appointments which are possible. And prosthodontists who have undergone proper training can offer these patients the convenience of the implants within their own practice. Now, to achieve their, I would say, their expectations, and we should also be aware of the fact that we have done a thorough planning about the implant procedure, as well as the prosthetic part. So I would say the treatment plan is the key for any kind of a good implant prosthesis. If our planning is not there, we are bound to be ready to surprise ourselves as well as surprise the patient. Now, we can get a surprise that, okay, now we have done this procedure and we are not able to do it. We as a prosthodontist try to compromise on the prosthesis part, but it will be if we are not able to achieve that kind of a expectation for the patient, now that's actually a very shameful thing for us. So the best way to enhance or to give a proper prosthesis of implant is to have a proper diagnosis and treatment planning. Now, if there is a common saying, as said by Benjamin Franklin, by failing to plan, you're planning to fail. So there lies why it is important to have a proper diagnosis and a treatment planning. Now, Diagnosis and treatment planning has to be based on in respect to a prosthodontist as well as in respect to a patient. Now, traditionally, traditional method involved around implant workflow where we used to place the implant first without thinking too much about the prosthetic part, and then wherever we find a good quality of bone, we used to just place the implant and without even thinking that what kind of a prosthesis are we planning towards the end of the procedure. Now that is a wrong, that is something that is totally wrong. If you are doing that, then we will be we will encounter a lot of hindrances in delivering a successful functional aesthetic prosthesis. Now, a comprehensive treatment planning is essential with every patient. But when it comes to a complex implant planning or even planning for a single implant, it becomes much more critical. Three major steps must be addressed and must be addressed well. They are thorough evaluation of the patient's medical history, proper diagnosis, and an appropriate planning. Now, proper diagnosis comes from collection of knowledge and experience. The more you work on your craft, and in this case, expand our understanding when it comes to the field of prosthodontics, both the surgical and the restorative aspect, the more capable and confident you are in your diagnosis. This will further assure you that you have a best long-term prognosis for our patients. The tools that help in proper diagnosis include our normal radiographs, that is IOPs, RBGs, CBCTs. A thorough model has to be, a study model has to be created, clinical examination. Now, these are paramount to have enough information to achieve a proper diagnosis for your patient, as well as the bone quality, the quantity, and the proper and sufficient space for the restoration. Now, in respect to a prosthodontist, an appropriate planning can be formulated after completing a thorough medical history, as I told you earlier, and receiving necessary information for proper diagnosis. Often the best pathway to success is to visualize the optimum end result and plan it backwards. Now, if we don't know where we want to go, then how will we reach there? So our planning has to be in a retrograde fashion. That is, according to the patient's need, what he desires, both in function and in aesthetics, our planning has to be done. What kind of prosthesis have you decided, or has to be given if the whatever the patient's is requirement is. Now, once we have decided upon the prosthesis part, then we can plan it out, the number of implants and the type of implants that we are planning to place. So the patient can demand anything. The patient can demand an extremely highly aesthetic now. Then a choice of abutment, whether a soft tissue surgery is required or a hard tissue surgery is required later on, all these things have to be taken into consideration. Now, in respect to patients, as I mentioned to you earlier, a clear treatment plan should be given to the patient after the person has been made aware of all the necessary steps that are required, all the risks and benefits of that steps which you are planning, that is extra steps, procedures that we are talking about, that is bone augmentation or even a soft tissue surgery, that has to be explained to the patient. Patients, sometimes it is also noteworthy, please, at times it is important to understand the patient's expectations more, because patient's expectation can change your treatment plan. few steps may be added based on that patient's expectation. Now, all these things are important because end of the day, the economic factors have to be disclosed to the patient. For example, a implant simple surgery has been done, and if you have promised the patient that you'll put a crown also in that particular rate or particular price, and end of the day, the patient is expecting a highly aesthetic crown with beautiful gingival covering on top, and then probably you have not explained the patient about the soft tissue surgery or the hard tissue or bone augmentation required, whether a customized or an angulated abutment was required, or what kind of a crown has to be put, a screw retain or a cement retain, or whether a zirconia crown has to be placed. Now, these things have a bearing on the economic factors. So, as I told you, treatment planning has to be based in respect to a prosthodontist and in respect to the patient. So, a workflow is essential. Now, conventional workflow, as we all know, was based on a provisional diagnosis, and a provisional treatment can be devised using an IOPA, RBG, OPG diagnostic cast, and a diagnostic wax-up. You can also do a bone mapping to evaluate the bone and then place the implant depending upon whatever the patient's desires are. And then you can go for a screw retain or a cement retain prosthesis according to patient's budget also, as well as his expectations. Taking into consideration, you have explained all the risk factors to the patient about the type of prosthesis that you have explained. Now, it is essential to understand that you do not overpromise, that you stick to your that you give the patient a realistic expectation. Now, a digital workflow can also be a treatment planning that you can go ahead with, which has to be, again, it is totally prosthetically driven. Now, a digital workflow, first a CBCT or a scanner of the CBCT has to be done. The doctor then uses this image to identify the anatomical landmarks, evaluate the bone structure. Next step is to create a digital model. And there are two ways to create a digital model. One, you can use an intraoral scanner, or you can just take a conventional impression and then scan that model. Then after then by using the interactive software for the treatment support, and the data from the CBCT and the digital image are merged together. Now, next step involves exporting the 3D data into a third-party software for the design and fabrication of a surgical guide. Now, thanks to prosthetic-driven workflow, that is prosthetically digital implant workflow, we can have a very good surgical guide. But please note at this particular point that a guide is only as good as the plan that went into creating it. And it is not a guarantee of a successful outcome, but just rather a facilitator. So if your planning is wrong, even by using modern technologies, modern day scans or modern day radiographs or CBCTs that are available, if your planning is not proper, you will end up in a failure despite using whatever best possible things that you have. The type and the nature of prosthesis is extremely important. Now, in implant dentistry, the prosthesis is designed at the onset of the treatment to satisfy the patient's needs and desire and to obtain an optimal result. This may range from a completely fixed prosthesis to one that is primarily a soft tissue support, that is, for example, an overdenture, an implant supported overdenture. Now, once the final prosthesis has been established, a dentist can establish the required number of implants, the type of implants, the location of implants, which are necessary to satisfy that is the patient's prosthodontic requirements. Now, as we all know, and you all PGs must be reading about it also, and our occlusal scheme should be an implant protected occlusal scheme. Now, to harmonize the occlusal forces between the implant and the teeth, prosthodontist uses heavy forces between the implant and the teeth. The dentist or the prosthodontist uses heavy bite force occlusal adjustment because it depresses the natural teeth, positioning them closer to the depressed implant position, and therefore permits an equal sharing of load. What type of abutment that we are planning, that has to be planned ahead, much ahead, or during the time of the treatment planning. Whether a straight abutment or an angulated abutment is required, or you will be needing a customized abutment, or you'll be needing some aesthetic abutment, for example, a zirconia abutment. All these things have to be taken into consideration. A prosthesis, whether it's a screw retained prosthesis, whether we are having enough space to give a cement treated prosthesis, all these things have to be taken into consideration, and obviously keeping in mind the implant protected occlusion, or you can say, and when we are planning for a full mouth rehabilitation, we have to have an occlusion which is I would say mutually protected. We have to allow, or we must have, an anterior guidance of an implant prosthesis that should be as shallow as practical, because the steeper the incisal guidance, greater will be the force of the anterior on the anterior implants. Now, in summary, if I put it, tell you about implant protection occlusion, is that all lateral excursion in implant protected occlusion opposing fixed prosthesis on natural teeth disocclude the posterior components. The lateral forces are disturbed to force the magnitude. However, if the anterior implants are to disocclude the posterior teeth, two or more teeth should be splinted to help in dissipate the lateral forces. We as dentist or prosthodontist should not over promise, give a realistic. I'm always reiterating this factor because patient may have a demand, and but maybe the bone is not enough, or maybe his budget constraint in there. We must avoid as much as cantilever as possible. Now, if we are giving a cantilever, we must take into consideration the anterior posterior spread, how much cantilever is ideally that you can give to the patient, and not place just few implants and have a cantilever which is huge, and in that way a lot of lateral forces will be falling on those on the cantilever, and therefore may lead to failure of your implant and well as your prosthesis. Now, before we once we have decided upon the prosthetic parts, our treatment planning, we have to take into consideration what type of surgery are we planning. Whether it's a conventional surgery, yes, it's pretty simple. Comparatively, it's more easier to do a conventional surgery. When I talk about conventional surgery, that is an implant that is being placed, that is usually after 3 months post extraction, anytime later. So it's an ideal situation. Immediate implant placement. Now that's a tricky part. You have to be more careful whether there is a periapical pathology. You have to take into whether the patient can, whether a grafting procedure is required in that case, whether there is a wall defect. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. early implant placement, usually we can go for an early implant placement. Mm, if time is a constraint for some patients, we can do an early placement that is usually done on the 4 to 6 week post extraction. Graft is required or no graft is required. Now that's an important thing which you have to know, and you have to explain it to the patient, because if you feel at the time of your assessment, or if your time of your treatment planning, that a graft is required. Now, generally, once a graft is required, your loading protocols are delayed. You have to. Again, the same goes for your direct and indirect sinus lift. The, again, indirect sinus lift, still the healing process is simpler. You can load at the conventional time, that would be 3 months later, or at times if a graft is required, and in case of a sinus lift, we can have a waiting period or an osseointegration period, I would say, um, for that can go up to 8 months or so. The quality of the bone, the number of implants and the dimension of implant and surface quality of implant and the patient's requirement and the soft tissue surgery, all these things have to be taken into consideration. Now, number of implants are, for a simple case or for a single tooth is pretty simple, or a 3-unit bridge is pretty simple. The number of implants become trickier when we are doing a full mouth rehabilitation. Now, there are a lot of things going on about, as you all know, about all on four, okay, all on four implants, all on four prostheses, all on six. So it just depends on the quality of the bone also, whether we can go in that case, go for an all on four in that particular patient. Um, Suppose the bone is also compromised, and if we plan for an all on four prosthesis, then you have to tell the patient that the long term success of the uh, prosthesis is guarded, as well as the implant. It might fail because too much load just on four implants, both mandibular and maxillary. So all these things have to be taken into consideration. Now, dimensions of implant. Now, when we talk about dimensions of implant, the broader the implant, as we know, the more the surface area. In fact, the more thicker implant that we can place, with each size, there is a 30% increase in the surface area. So, mm, mm, if you are lucky, if you have a good uh, mm, I would say thickness of bone. Generally, the bones that we are of lately, or we generally get, we are not getting those desired kind of width. Surface coating. Now, surface coating implants are generally preferred nowadays. SLA coated surfaces, SLA surfaces. The more the surface coating or the surface treatment has been done to the implant, they provide a more, or I would say a greater surface area. Therefore, the osseointegration is better. So, as you know, a few implants which are now promoting, I would say, few brands. I do not want to name them, but few brands, they come up with the loading protocol that can be done immediately, or you can load an implant which can be done within 3 to 6 weeks also nowadays. Now, all these things have to, but these often have a bearing on the economic consideration. So all these treatment planning has to be taken into consideration. The same goes for his aesthetic requirement. And when I talk about aesthetic requirement, I not only talk about, I'm not only just mentioning about the type of crown that you are planning to give, whether it's a screw retain or a cement retain. It might be about your um, all ceramic crowns. Mm. And at the same time, if it's in an anterior region and if you feel there is a defect, not only at a hard tissue, but a soft tissue surgery may also be required. So all these things, they have to be taken into consideration. Now, The second step, that once the surgical planning has been done, we also have to take into consideration the type of impressions that we might have to take. And ideally would be to take a open tray impression. That would be an ideal open. That would be an ideal situation. You can also take a closed tray, but if it's I would advise you to take a closed tray impression if it's a single tooth implant. For for multiple tooth, you have to go in for a definitely go in for an open tray technique. So you might have to go in for a lot of prosthetic procedures that has to be taken into consideration. Now, you can also go with, I would say, digital impressions nowadays. But all these things are adding to your cost and have to be explained to the patient. So apart from the prosthetics or the implant procedures will be explained to a certain extent in detail by Dr. Abhinav Shekhar in the next part of the presentation. So I'll not go too much into that part presently, but if there is a multiple implants, lot of procedures, as we all know, have to be taken into consideration. Open trade, you have to take a jig trial. After a trial has to be done, a try-in has to be done. Procedures are procedures have to be taken into consideration. Now, coming to the third or the last part of my presentation, what we are here today is to tell you about the loading. Now, our loading can be what we have already been studying about is the delayed loading, immediate loading, or the progressive loading, which is given by Carl Misch. Or we can have an ITI protocol, where the details of which will be explained by Dr. Anshuman, and about the ITI loading protocol, as well as the European Association of Osseointegration and the Cochrane review. The protocols will be told by Dr. Anshuman. Now, I request Dr. Abhinav Shekhar to join in now, and he will briefly explain to you about the implant prosthetic components as well as the impression procedures. Over to you, Dr. Abhinav. Please join in.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Before beginning with the loading protocol, I would like to give a brief overview about the prosthetic procedure after the implant placement. Now, the first surgery involves the placement of the implant into the bone. After the implant has been placed, then immediately we place the cover screw attached to the implant platform, and the raised flap is then repositioned over the implant site and for the cancellation of the cover screw and the implant. Now, after about average of 3 to 6 months on how the implant site has been healed, the second stage surgery is performed. Now, what do we do in the second stage surgery? The implant site is reopened and the cover screw is removed. After the cover screw is removed, we place a healing abutment on the implant. Now, various types of healing abutments are present in the market by the companies, varying on the diameters. It can be of 2 mm diameter or 3 mm diameter or 4 mm diameter. According to the requirement, we place the healing abutment on the implant. Next, the healing abutment is placed on the implant for about 2 to 5 weeks, depending on the healing of the site. After the healing abutment is removed, the site is replaced by the abutment of the final restoration. Now, how do we carry on with the impression of the implant? Now, what are the basic components required for the implant impression? Those are the implant transfer coping. What are the transfer coping? Transfer coping is a component which is used to transfer the spatial orientation of the implant in the alveolar ridge and along with the adjacent dentition or the other structure. I mean to say means the implant is placed in the bone. Now to transfer the exact position of the implant in the bone, we need the transfer coping to be placed on the implant, and this facilitates the position of the implant in the bone. Now there are two types of impression coping. First is the indirect one and the second is the direct one. It is the indirect one is also called as the closed tree impression post, and the direct one is also called as a open tray impression post. Now, according to the requirement of the impression, we may use any of these. We can further classify the implant impression on two parts. First is the implant level impression technique, which uses the direct and the indirect post, and the second one is the abutment level, in which we do not use the impression post. Instead, we use the stock abutment supplied by the company. In the implant level impression, we can use either an indirect closed tray impression technique or the open tray impression technique. In the closed tray impression technique, we use the closed tray post or the indirect post, and in the open tray we use the direct or the open tray impression post, and in the abutment level we use the abutment. Now we are going to talk about in detail about the indirect impression technique. In the indirect impression technique, I'm going to repeat this thing. We are using the closed tray impression post. Now the closed tray impression post is placed in the patient's mouth. I mean to say is screwed on the implant fixture, and we place the impression tray along with the impression material in the patient's mouth. Once the impression material is set, we unscrew the impression post and take it out, and we place it back into the impression. Now, as you can see in the diagram, there is a flat surface. There is a flat part in the impression post. This flat part facilitates in replacement of the impression post in the impression. I mean to say it helps in the reorientation of the impression post in the impression. It also helps in removal of the impression post out of the impression also, but the main function of the flat part of the post is for the reorientation of the impression post in the impression. Now in the direct impression technique, we are using the open tray impression post. It is a bit of squarish in shape and with a long hollow screw in the center. Since it has a long hollow screw in the center, a special type of tray is required, which is also called a custom tray, which has a hole in the implant impression site for accessing the implant screw. The impression procedure is almost same. We place the impression tray along with the impression materials in the patient's mouth and let the impression set, and we unscrew the screw of the impression post, and we take out the impression tray along with the impression post embedded in the impression material. Once the impression has been set and the tray is out of the patient's mouth, we place the analog in the impression post while it is embedded in the impression tray. Now direct impression tray direct or the open impression technique can also be further classified into splinted and non-splinted. Now splinted impression technique is specially used when there are multiple implants in the patient's mouth or there is an angulation in the patient's mouth. We have to splint the impression post with the pattern resin for checking the insertion of the impression post and to check the common path of insertion. Secondly, the need of the splinting is to avoid any micro movements of the impression post while taking the impression. Since we are using, most commonly we use putty and along with the light body for the impression, since putty being a sluggish material, it tends to change the it tends to flex the impression post a bit, which changes the actual implant position. To avoid this, we splint all the impression posts with the pattern resin. If there is no such angulation or there is no requirement of splinting, we can also use without splinting of the impression post. Now for the abutment level impression do not require any such impression post. Instead, we use this stock abutment supplied by the company. We place it in the patient's mouth and screw it with the screw, and the impression is made. Once the impression is made, we can pour the cast and the prosthesis can be fabricated on that. Now, what are screwdrivers? Screwdrivers are one of the essential requirement of an implant kit. With these screwdrivers, we can tighten these screws, we can tighten the various components on the implant fixture, or we can also loosen the screws and open it and do the various jobs in the lab along with in the patient's mouth. Now, what are abutments? Abutments are the components of the implant system that serves to support or retain a prosthesis or the implant superstructure. Now, further, the abutments can be classified for abutment for fixed prosthesis or the abutment for removal prosthesis. Now, abutment for fixed prosthesis can be further classified into definitive or provisional abutments. In the definitive abutments, there are further classified into two types. One is the prefabricated abutments or the stock abutments, and the second one is the custom abutments. Now, prefabricated abutments can be a straight abutment or an angulated abutment. Angulated abutments are specially used in such location where angulation correction is required for the fabrication of the prosthesis. Otherwise, we can go in for a straight abutment. Now, what are custom abutments? Custom abutments are used to provide freedom to the clinician to correct the angulation or the position of the implant. We can use a castable abutment or a CAD/CAM abutment. Castable abutments are the abutments which are supplied by the companies in a plastic form. It may have a machined metallic interface ring in it, or it may be without a metal machined interface ring. We can add a wax up on this, we can correct the abutment, and finally we can cast this abutment by a lost wax technique. And the restoration after the casting is done, we can fit it in the patient's mouth. Now, what are CAD/CAM abutments? CAD/CAM abutments are such that we can use, or to say design and fabricate the custom abutment by a CAD/CAM machine. This method allows the clinician to specify the design criteria and the material choice and the abutment in a customized design pattern. Then after designing is done, it is milled by the CAM machine. Now we come on to the temporary abutments. Temporary abutments are used if the patient desires for an immediate prosthesis. If we are going to give an immediate prosthesis to the patient, we will be requiring a temporary abutments which are placed in the patient's mouth, and we can fabricate a temporary prosthesis on top of that, which will be replaced by the definitive prosthesis on later on stage. Now, abutments for removal processes. In removal processes also, we can place the various types of abutments like the stud abutments, which are most commonly used in the overdenture cases, locator abutments for overdenture cases. We can also have the barred attachments for such cases, or for example, we can use a telescopic attachment for friction fit of the overdenture. Now, the rest part of the presentation will be continued by Dr. Love Bhatia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abhinav sir. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizing team of Indian Prosthodontic Society for this 49th Indian Prosthodontic Society National Conference. My regards to the patrons and the members of the organizing committee. After that, I would like to congratulate and I would also like to thank my head of department for allowing me to present this pre-conference course and allowing me to present this pre-conference course for the postgraduates at the national level. Thank you so much, sir. So, as you all know, that loading of implant is one of the concepts that is very much in demand, and how to do the loading, that is of a very prime importance. So it is like a journey. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And that journey we are discussing about is the loading of implants, the implants for which we did the virtual planning in the initial phases. We got to take risks because every field experiment is one step closer to success. And why I'm emphasizing on taking a risk is why I'm saying that it's so important that you are going to probably know in the slides to come. So let's enjoy the journey of loading of the implants. The conventional loading will be covered by me, myself, Dr. Lav Kumar Bhatia, and the advancements that are given by ITI and the European Association will be covered up by Dr. Anshuman, which will be in the slides to come. Before going on to the loading and understanding the protocols, I would like to emphasize regarding the terminologies of the loading. So what is conventional loading? It's the loading of dental implants after 2 months of the implant placement. The immediate loading is loading the dental implants immediately or earlier than 1 week after the implant placement. Early loading of dental implants is between the 1 week and 2 months after the implant placement. And progressive loading, as you all know, is done after the 3 months. And once the loading is done over a period of 3 months, that is 12 weeks, it is the progressive steps that we are going to take while loading the implants. Now, coming on directly to the protocols of the implant placement. First is the conventional or the delayed loading protocol. It is the Brainmark's original protocol. That is, once the tooth extraction is done, we have to wait for 3 to 6 months after the implant place, before the implant placement. That is, we want the bone to form. We need the adequate amount of bone for placing the implants. It is a very conventional procedure that we do, though this process requires a lot of time. That is, once the tooth extraction is done, we need to take 3 to 6 months for the bone to form. Now it depends what kind of bone is formed, whether it is D1 or 2, 3 or D4 kind of a bone. Then
after 3 to 6 months, the stage 1 implant surgery is done. After that, we have to wait another for 4 to 6 months for the osseointegration to happen, and then the stage 2 surgery or the prosthetic rehabilitation time comes, in which we do the loading of the implants. Now, the loading also depends upon the bone density and the bone implant interface. Now, talking about the before the bone density, we need to know about the Wolff's law. The Wolff was a German anatomist and a surgeon, Julius Wolff. That bone in a healthy person or animal will adapt to loads under which it is placed. If a loading on a particular bone increases, the bone will remodel itself over time to become stronger to resist that sort of loading. The internal architecture of the trabecular bone undergoes adaptive changes, followed by the secondary changes to the external cortical portion of the bone, perhaps becoming thicker as a result. That inverse is also true. If the bone is not loaded, that is, if the bone loading on a bone decreases, the bone will become less dense and weaker due to the lack of the stimulus required for continued remodeling. This reduction in bone density, osteopenia, is known as stress shielding. That is, if we load the bone continuously, then the bone that will be there will have a more dense trabecular pattern, and we will have a very nice bone that will be around the implants. So bone density is one very important factor. The second thing that we need to understand is the bone implant contact. We need to have a more bone implant contact. For this, we need a more of a cortical bone around the implant. The bone implant contact in maxilla and mandible ranged from 7 to 9% increase over a period of 3 months. That is, once the implant is placed, the BIC increases over a period of 3 months. That is the during the healing phase. Now, D1 has more strength, more lamellar bone contact is present. For D3 and a D4, there is a decreased bone contact and decreased amount of cortical bone. So, as a surgeon or as a prosthodontist, we all want that there should be more of a cortical bone, and over the period of time, during the healing phase, we want the bone implant contact to be more mature, and there should be increase in the BIC. Now, coming on to the progressive loading protocol, which was given by Carl E. Misch in 1980. Now, it's a insurance kind of a loading protocol. That is, once the progressive loading concept is taken into mind, then we can do the loading in the cases in which we have placed less implants and when there is a soft bone present. Also, the concept of gradual bone loading or the progressive bone loading came because when there is a decreased crystal bone or when there is a reduced early implant failure, then we must go for the concept of gradual bone loading. Now, what are the risk factors that are involved in the progressive bone loading or any kind of loading protocol? Like, we have to consider the age and the ethnicity of the people. We have to see how much active lifestyle a patient has, whether the patient is an alcohol consumer or not, whether his life has high stress or the low stress. Nowadays, majority of our population has high stress levels. The obesity is one of the common problems we face today. The health problems or the systemic issues are there. Patient usually consume high salt. The smoking is a very common problem these days we have in our younger generation. And overall, these problems lead to high blood pressure and a diabetes. So these are the risk factors that are involved. We have to be very calculative about what kind of loading protocol we have chosen, and all the calculation is dependent upon the risk factors that are involved in by the patient. So once the loading forces are gradually increased, the provisional restorations are finally converted into the final restoration. There are various dietary modifications. It all depends upon the loading forces. Initially, we give a very low load and we give the load on only on the provisional restorations. Over a period of time, once then we progress with the final loading, The dietary modifications are done from the soft food to the harder food. There is a rate of increase in the bone density during the progressive loading. The provisional restorations are modified in every appointment. Whenever the patient comes, we have to change the provisional restoration, we have to modify the occlusal contacts in the provisional restoration. The definitive prostheses are given after the complete provisional loading. Once we load the provisional prostheses completely with all the occlusal contacts in the long axis of the tooth, then only we give the definitive prosthesis. We use a cement retained prosthesis for the progressive loading protocol. There is a longer healing time that allows the greater mineralization of bone and more mature lamellar bone to be formed. As you can see in the picture, a man takes a time for from obese to a fit man. In the same way, the progressive loading also takes a longer healing time because we want a more mature bone and a more highly mineralized bone around the implant. There is a dietary involvement. The diet has to also be modified during the phases of the loading. In this image, you can see there is an implant with the prosthesis having a cantilever. Now we have to make sure where we are placing the forces. Though we can give a cantilever on the progressive loading phases, but we have to make sure that there are no occlusal contacts in the transitional processes of the progressive loading protocol. Also, the loading forces should be on the long axis of the tooth, long axis of the implant, not on the non-axial points. Also, we have to understand the movement of the implants in all the direction. On the vertical axis, there may be horizontal movement. On the horizontal axis, there may be a mesiodistal movement of the implant. There may be a lingual or a buccolingual movement of the implant that may happen. Or if there are non-axial or tangential forces are happening on the implant, then there will be a facial lingual axis in which there will be severe movements of the implant. So we have to make sure that whatever force we are applying on the implant has to be on the long axis of the implant. Now, the elements of progressive loading. There are 5 elements for the success of any implant when loaded using a progressive loading protocol. It's the time, diet, the material of occlusion, the type of occlusion, and the prosthetic design that we are using. First is the time. We require the time to heal, and the time of healing is dependent upon the type of bone density that is available during the uncovering stage around the implants. For the D1 type of a bone, we require a total time of 5 to 5.5 months. That is, 5.5 months are required for loading of the implants in the D1 type of a bone. In comparison to the D4 bone, we can see almost 12.5 months are required for the loading of the implants. And also, all these are the cement retained prostheses that we are giving to the patients. The second most important factor for the success is the diet. For the diet, we have to be on a very restricted soft foods, that is the pasta or the fish or the paneer or the tofu, which are very suffer to eat, or the boiled rice that we can give to the Indian population, because initially what we have given to the patient is an acrylic prosthesis, and that is also not in any occlusal contacts. Over a period of time, when the occlusal contacts increases, we can give more semi-solid kind of food, and once we convert the transitional to a final prosthesis, we can ask the patient to chew on hard food or a hard meat. So this is a website, eatthis.com, which you can all go and see 23 best foods to eat after surgery. The third is the occlusal material. The occlusal material for the choice is acrylic in all the progressive loading phases. We cannot use the metal crowns or the all ceramic crowns or the stainless steel crowns immediately in the initial phases of the transition processes that we give to the patient. The occlusal type of occlusion that we choose for the transitional processes is a no occlusal contact prosthesis. So you can see from 0 to hero, we are going from the 0 occlusal contacts to all the occlusal contacts that we are giving to the patient. Now, prosthesis design. Initially, once we give the first transitional processes to any patient, there are no occlusal contacts and strictly no cantilevers. We have to make sure that there are no cantilevers in the first transitional acrylic restoration, and then the second transitional acrylic restoration also we are giving no cantilevers, but occlusal contacts are similar to the final one. And in the final restoration, we have to make sure that the occlusal tables are narrower. There should be an implant protected occlusion. Cantilevers can be given, but my suggestion, dear friends, it should be avoided to the most we can give. And the final restoration can be of any hard material that we choose depending upon the requirements. Now this image again shows where all the forces are applied, how much of the cantilever length that we can provide to the patient. We see in this image that the cantilever that we have given is getting the lingual forces, the tongue forces are also on the cantilever. So we have to see how much of the cantilever that can be given, the height of the cantilever abutments, the height of the context in the cantilever that we are using has to be very much of are a very much important, and the forces that are acting, because the forces that are acting on the cantilever will almost have a rocking effect on the implants, and the moment there are non-axial forces acting on the implant, there will be the the bone around the implant will start resorbing, and that we do not want. Now the progressive loading phases. The progressive loading phase starts in the stage 2 uncovery phase. Once the patient comes for the uncovery phase, we have to evaluate the implant's clinical mobility, the bone loss around the implant, the proper placement of the implant, the zones of the attached gingiva. The gingival thickness has to be accounted for. And once we do the uncovery phase, we give a gingival former to the patients. I expect that all the participants attending the program have a very basic knowledge regarding the pre-conference course is more about the loading protocol. So the basic implant rehab process we all know, and also Dr. Abhinav Shekhar has already explained in detail regarding the rehabilitation process. So the gingival former is placed and the sutures are given. The suture removal has to be done after 2 weeks. Now the images as shown from the mesh, I have preserved the presentation on a very basic note, so that you can correlate it whatever has been given in the books. So once the uncovery is done, we place the abutments and take a primary impression for the patient and give the sutures. Now what happens is the scheduling of the appointments is done in 5 steps. The first step is the initial abutment selection and primary impression, which is followed by a laboratory phase. Then the second appointment comes, in which we take the final impression and transitional processes first is given. Then there again is a laboratory phase in which we fabricate the metal superstructure, and the third appointment is a try-on of the metal superstructure and the fabric, and the delivery of the transitional process is second, followed by a laboratory phase 3, and then there will be an initial prosthesis delivery and a final prosthetic delivery. The first is the initial abutment selection and primary impression. What we are going to do in the initial abutment selection is we are going to remove the gingival former and simply place the cementable abutments or an indirect impression transfer. We don't apply any torque wrench, just a finger pressure, because the bone contact surface, bone implant contact surface is very immature. We don't want it to disturb it. We just take a simple closed tray impression, or an open tray transfer can be used. We just evaluate the parallelism. If the implants are not parallel, we can give two-piece abutment if the angle is more than 30 degree. We then remove the abutment or the implant indirect impression transfer that is attached onto the implant after taking the impression, and then we attach the implant body analog to the impression post or to the abutments. We place the gingival formers and send back the patient. Now what we are going to do is we are going to send this impression to the lab. A very simple process. We all know we have to pour the impression and then we have to fabricate 2 transitional processes. But we have to make sure there are no occlusal contacts and no cantilever. My dear friends, please don't use cantilevers unless and until required to the most. Now the second appointment comes in which we are going to take a final impression and we're going to place first transitional processes. We'll remove the gingival former simply. We'll place an anaerobic sealer on the abutment screw. We'll just thread the abutments by hand. A simple 10 Newton centimeter of force is applied. If there are angled abutments, then we automatically place the two-piece abutments and the abutment preparation is done. As you can see, simply the abutments are placed and the abutment preparation is done. We can take a radiograph to check whether the implant abutment contact is tight or not. Now what we are going to do is we are going to reline the transitional process. Since we have made it in the lab, there might be a chances that the mucosa has reduced or the shrinkage of mucosa has happened around the gingival formers due to healing. We just reline the processes for a better emergence profile and for a better soft tissue healing. Then we take the final impressions. Jaw relation and a bite registration is done, and then we'll use the first transitional processes after the relining with a non-eugenol zinc oxide cement and make sure that there are zero occlusal contacts, that it is very much visible that there is a space between the occlusion in the implants and the opposite tooth. Now we have to give the instructions to the patient, because what will happen, patient will feel that just I have received the teeth, now we can eat whatever we feel like. So we ask them, don't expect anything, there is nothing you can chew on this side, on the side of the rehabilitation, because the bone is immature and weak. There might happen the implant might lose and the bone loss can happen. So avoid chewing from that side, and whatever you eat, you are going to eat very soft like pasta and fish. No aggressive fooding, hard foods or the sticky foods are allowed. Now in the laboratory phase 2, what will happen, we will pour the final model. We'll do a full wax up, a cutback for the ceramization. We'll do the casting, and we'll also fabricate a occlusion using the acrylic occlusal index that was utilized for the fabrication of first transitional processes. Now you can see in the image that the contacts are almost on the center of the prosthesis. In the third appointment, we are going to try in for the metal superstructure. We'll remove the first transitional processes. Now we have to check for the retention of the first transitional processes, because if the processes comes out easily, then we have to use a more harder cement. If it takes a lot of force to remove the first transitional processes, then definitely we have to use a softer cement for the retention, for the luting of transitional processes. Second, we have to try the metal superstructure and we have to verify the centric relation. And now we have to deliver the transitional processes second with few contacts on heavy occlusion only, and the contacts are limited to the implant bodies or the center of the implant. No cantilevers are allowed and only a soft height is advised. Now we have to completely fabricate the final processes with an implant protected occlusion, and we have to make sure that all the forces are directed on the long axis of the implant. As you can see, the delivery of the final prosthesis in the end for the patient. Now, the delivery also happens in two phases. There is an initial prosthesis delivery, then there is a final prosthetic delivery. In the initial prosthetic delivery, we are going to deliver the final prosthesis, and we are going to equilibrate the occlusion with a light force followed by a heavy force. There are no contacts on lateral excursion. There should be a narrow occlusal table. We are going to take a radiograph or an RVG or IOPR simply with, and we have to see that this is a baseline X-ray and there are no bone loss. If any bone loss are present, then suspect any kind of a parafunction and a night guard must be advised. Now the diet can be given a hard diet to the patient. The fifth is the final delivery of the patient. This is the final appointment. What you have to do is you have to remove the processes and check for the retention of the processor. If it comes out easily, then please use a harder cement. If it comes out with a heavy force, then use a softer cement. So the cement selection is also done at this stage, and we have to check for the occlusal equilibration of the processes by clinical evaluation. Also, we have to evaluate the soft tissues We have to check for the, we have to ask the patient that you can eat now raw vegetables and hard meat. Also, the follow-up is done after 3 to 4 months. So this was all about the progressive loading of the implants. Now comes the immediate loading. So the progressive loading protocol phase was a bit longer depending upon the bone density. Now immediate loading, as also this was given by Kali Mish, is a one-stage procedure. It's a non-submerged implant procedure. In this, the more soft tissue, mature soft tissue is formed before the fabrication of final prosthesis. The loads are given on the provisional restoration. So we are not going to wait to give the final prosthesis to the patient. We are just preparing the, we're placing the implants and we are giving the prosthesis immediately after the placement of the implant. Now, what is the rationale? How it is different from the progressive loading? It is dependent upon two things, that is the surgical trauma and the bone load trauma. Surgical trauma is the patient is not going to go under surgery for 2 times. See, immediately after the extraction, the implant is placed and the rehabilitation is done with the transitional processes. So the two-phase surgery is reduced in comparison to the progressive loading. And if we consider the Brainmark's original protocol, then there are 3 surgeries that were happening in the Brainmark's original protocol. That was, first was the extraction, second was the implant placement, third was the uncovery stage. In the progressive loading, there were 2 phases, the implant placement stage and the uncovery stage. And in the immediate loading phase, there is only one step surgery, that is the implant placement stage. The extraction and the implant placement and the rehabilitation is done immediately on the same day or 1 to 2 weeks after the placement of the implant, but the implant is almost exposed in all the times. So there is an accelerated bone repair around the implants. The thermal injury or the bone microfracture that happens around the implant is also reduced. The amount of drilling, drill sharpness, depth of osteotomy, and the cortical thickness is dependent in this protocol. The bone loading trauma is, that is the bone remodeling, that overall remodeling of the bone in the region of the implants, also at the bone implant contact surface. Now, as a surgeon or as a prosthodontist, we all want, or as a dentist, we all want the lamellar bone to be formed around the implant, which is more organized, mineralized, strongest, modulus of elasticity is high. There is a load bearing bone. It is 1.5 micron per day formation of the bone, the strong bone, and it responds to mechanical environment of occlusal loading, whereas the woven bone is less mineralized, less organized, weaker, and more flexible. So for the immediate occlusal loading, the factors that decreases risk, first is the bone microstrain. The frost, given the microstrain pattern and considering the strain pattern, we all want the bone to remain in an adaptive window, whereas the bone remodeling and the bone implant surface remodeling happens in a very physiologic manner. We all don't want that a pathologic overload window or a spontaneous fracture window should happen around the implants. The second factor that decreases risk is the increased surface area. How we can increase the surface area? By placing more number of implants, whether in the maxilla or in the mandible. Now, this depends upon the type of bone that we get. There might be a severe resorption, but still we want to place maximum number of implants in whatever space we have got. The second point that comes under the increased surface area is the implant size. The implant size and the implant body design are all dependent upon the thread design, the thread depth, the body of the implant, the crest module. For every increase in the millimeter of the length, there is a 3 to 20% of the surface area increase in the implant size, in the surface area of the implant. The anti-rotation feature that we want, all these features just increases the surface area of the implant with the contact of the bone. Now, as you can see in this picture, the latest implants now have micro threads, that is the thread between the threads, between the major threads. So this all increases the surface area around the, on the implant for the bone to contact. and majority of the implants now have micro threads at the crest module. So that increases the surface area at the crest module and thereby less bone resorption around the crest. The thread design like V shape, reverse buttress, square fit or press shape, all these are important factors for the success of the implant. The implant surface conditions. Initially, we had hydroxyapatite, calcium phosphate, SLA, sandblasted surface, non-coated plasma surfaces. Now we have Ti-Unite and a Ti-Ultra surface that are available with us. So all these help us in success of the cases that we do. The third factor that is for the success of an implant can be the decreased force condition. Now, what all I'm talking about is for the immediate loading. So decreased force condition is dependent upon the patient factors. If there are greater occlusal force, then definitely implant failure or implant fracture or the prosthetic failure might happen. So these are all the consequences of parafunctions like bruxism and clenching. We don't want the patient to brux or clench on the implant. Even if this is happening, then we have to give a protective covering like a night guard over the prosthesis that we have given to the patient. The occlusal force direction. Again and again, I'm saying this is the fourth time that I'm emphasizing upon the forces that are happening on the implant. We all want the axial load on the implants because with the axial load, more mature bone and the lamellar bone is formed around the implants with lower bone remodeling. We need to eliminate the posterior cantilevers in the immediate load transitional restorations. The implant position, we have to place the implant in a very strategic location. We don't want to place the implants where we again have to give the cantilever. So make sure wherever you place the implants, at least you place in a very correct position, considering also the anatomic features that are available like the foramens, the sinus, the nerves that we have to protect. And wherever we place the implant, try avoid the cantilevers on the prosthesis. The splinted arch position concept for completely edentulous is advantageous for immediate load transitional prosthesis. Now for the maxilla, we have to section in 4 to 5 sections, that is bilateral canine area and bilateral posterior sections in which we are going to place the implants. For the mandible, we have to divide the mandible in 3 sections from canine to canine and bilateral posterior area, and we are going to place the implant in these sections only. For the completely edentulous conditions, now this was all about the success and the factors that were dependent for the immediate loading of implant. Now how immediate loading is done in completely edentulous patients? There are 2 approaches. The first is a Smitnan et al. Approach in which we place, like if we're placing 7 implants, we are keeping few submerged and we are loading the few. We are not loading all the implants. And the second approach in which we are loading all the implants. Now, immediate loading procedure for fixed prosthesis are divided in 2 phases. The prosthetic phase is divided in 2 phases. The loading on the same day, and the second is if you are doing the surgery, we'll take an impression and then load it at 7 to 10 days. So there are 2 things that you have to keep in mind. First is the approach that we are using. Either we are loading all the implants or we are loading few and submerging few. And the second option is we load on the same day or after 7 to 10 days. The option 1 is we are placing the implants and we are loading all the implants and loading on the same day. The option 2 is implant placement and then loading at 7 to 10 days. I hope you all can appreciate these images. The second concept for immediate loading is the partial edentulous condition. That was for the completely edentulous condition. Now it's a partial edentulous condition in which there is an end-fit concept, that is a non-functional immediate teeth concept that was also given by Mish. So in this, we will place the implant, we'll rehabilitate, but we will not give any functional contact to the implant prosthesis because it's an end-fit concept. Now there are few risks that are related to implant loading. First is the implant failure risk. If you keep all the factors in mind, the chances of implant failure are very less. Greater crestal bone loss, This will happen if the non-axial forces are acting. Loss of lateral crestal plates, definitely for the non-axial forces, the crestal plates are going to be reduced or the loss, or there is a bone defect post implant failure. So whatever forces that you are applying to the implant, it should be axial. No non-axial forces are allowed. So this was all about your progressive loading, the Brainmark's original protocol, and the immediate loading. Now we are going to understand the advanced concepts of implant loading, that is the ITI concept or European Association concept. So this will be covered by Dr. Anshuman. I would request Dr. Anshuman to please explain the candidates regarding the immediate the loading protocols, the advancements. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Love. I would like to thank my head of the department, Dr. Respected Shidut sir, for providing me with this opportunity to present this topic. And I would like to congratulate the team IPS Chennai for this 49th virtual event. Moving on to the further part of this lecture, I'll be dealing with basically the ITI consensus, and I have taken all these slides from treatment guides, the treatment modalities given by ITI. So before moving forward, let's have basically what is an ITI? What is ITI? ITI is an independent scientific partner of the world leading implant manufacturing company, that is the Straumann. It is largest international academic organization for implant dentistry and is related to tissue regeneration and especially focuses on evidence-based, well-documented treatment guidelines and consolidation of long-term data. So whatever I have given, whatever ITI is given, whatever I have mentioned in this presentation is basically from the treatment guides of ITI. The consensus report and the different classifications given by ITI are based upon the different studies, meta-analysis, and only on long-term survival data. Now, if you talk about the consensus, the first consensus was given in Barcelona, Spain, that is in 2002. They have mentioned a few terms, their terms being immediate loading, early loading, conventional loading, and delayed loading. Immediate loading, in which the prosthesis is attached to the implant on the same day of the implant placement. Early loading, in which the prosthesis is attached in a second procedure earlier than the conventional loading of 3 to 6 months. Conventional loading, the prosthesis is attached to the implant in a second procedure 3 to 6 months after the implants are placed. In delayed loading, the prosthesis is attached in a second procedure later than the conventional healing period of 3 to 6 months. Now, this loading protocol was modified in 2003 by ITI consensus in Switzerland, and they have modified the definition by saying the immediate loading is to be done within 48 hours and the occlusion and the restoration place is in occlusion. Early loading, the concept says that the restoration is in contact with the opposing dentition and is placed at least 48 hours later and before 3 months. Conventional loading, the prosthesis is attached in a second procedure after a healing period of 3 to 6 months as given earlier. Delayed loading, anything that is done after 3 to 6 months is delayed loading. They have added a new word, that is the immediate restoration. The immediate restoration is nothing. It is the insertion of a prosthesis within 48 hours. That is immediate loading, but the restoration or the prosthesis is not at all in occlusion with the opposing dentition. So the few cases for immediate restoration could be anything that is given as a non-functional loading in anterior zone or in basically the aesthetic zone is a immediate restoration. The revised consensus, they were given in EAO, or the European Association of Osseointegration, that was held in Zurich, Switzerland. It was in 2006. They have mentioned, they have cut shorted a few terms. They have said immediate loading. It is a situation in which the superstructure is attached to the implants in occlusion with opposing dentation within 72 hours. So they have said the immediate loading should be in occlusion. Conventional loading, it should have an unloaded healing period of 3 months for mandible, and it should have a minimum of unloaded healing period of 6 months in maxilla. That is the conventional loading protocol. Then after the conventional loading protocol, they have a new term, that is non-functional immediate loading and immediate restoration. In the earlier concept, they said immediate loading and immediate restoration, but now they said it is non-functional immediate loading and immediate restoration. It is given within 72 hours of the surgery without any full occlusion contact with the opposing dentation, same as in the case of aesthetic zones. Now, this Cochrane systemic review that was given in 2007, it is one of the most accepted, and it is a recent classification that is given. The terminology says immediate loading, the situation in which the superstructure is attached to the implant in occlusion with the opposing dentation within 1 week. So anything that is done over the implant, any superstructure that is given within 1 week is an immediate loading scenario. Early loading, the situation in which the superstructure is attached to the implant in occlusion to the opposing dentation within 1 week or more than 1 week, but it should be less than 2 months, is an early loading scenario. Then we have a conventional loading in which the prosthesis is attached to the implant after an unloaded healing period of more than 3 months. This is a conventional loading protocol. Now, it is a table in which we have, I have classified all the different terms, the Barcelona, the ITI, and the recent consensus of European Association and the Cochrane review. Now, moving further, these are the various factors that affect the loading protocol, or I would say these are the basic pillars one should know about the loading protocols: the clinician, the patient, the treatment approach, and the biomaterials that are to be used. The clinician's experience, the skill, is of utmost importance. Now you all can see the patient is having a dental risk factor and a medical risk factor, and the clinician's experience and skill must ensure that they cover both the risk factors. Other risk factors being the anatomic risk, the positioning of the nerve, the positioning of the vital structures, or any habits of the patients like smoking. I've mentioned smoking just for an example. The clinician should already be known about all these scenarios. Then the treatment approach of these patient changes as if the patient anatomic risk factors are involved, the treatment approach can also be changed. The documentation and the risk scenarios also changes as per the patient anatomic risk or the factors. All right, then biomaterials. The documentation of the biomaterial, the clinical judgment of the patient about that biomaterial also changes the protocol. And lastly, but not least, the difficulty level, that is the SAC classification. This is the classification that was given in ITI and is most basic classification for all the treatment approaches. Now, the SAC classification. Now, if you talk about the SAC classification, ITI says the implant procedure is to be divided into two phases. The first phase being the surgical and the second phase being the restorative phase. All the surgical and the restorative phases have different categories. The characteristics being straightforward case, advanced case, or the complex case. Even the restorative phases have straightforward cases, advanced cases, and the complex cases. Now, surgical phases, the determinants of surgical phases. Determinants, these are the factors that decides whether the implant is whether the implant surgical protocol is a straightforward case or an advanced case or a complex case. The first phase in the surgical phase is the bone volume. Is the bone volume. Now, ITI says if the bone volume is sufficient, it can be classified as a straightforward case. But if the bone volume requires is deficient horizontally, which requires a grafting, or implant placement on a bone in which there is a horizontal defect which requires prior grafting, okay, can be classified as an advanced cases. But in which there is diminished bone or deficient vertical bone is classified as a complex case. The anatomic risk, if the implant that is to be placed in a sufficient bony area and there is no nearby support, nearby anatomic factors, okay, can be classified as a straightforward case, but in which there is some sinus augmentation, or in which cases we have to bypass a nerve, or we have some other structures, okay, then they can be classified as an advanced or a complex case. Aesthetic risk, ITI plays a very important role. ITI gives very importance to this aesthetic risk. Okay, so all the cases in which aesthetics are of prime concern, okay, can be classified as your advanced or a complex cases. Now the restorative phases, the determinants for a single tooth and an edentulous space. For a single tooth, it should have an intermediate arch distance, in good interarch distance, a good mesodistal space. The access to the site should be easy. The loading protocol, we will be discussing it in the further slides. The aesthetic risk, we have already explained about the aesthetic risk. Occlusal parafunction and the provisional restoration. These all defines the restorative phases. For an edentulous spaces or an edentulous arch, the interarch distance, the loading protocol, the aesthetic risk, parafunction, provisional or the interim restoration that is given to the patient, occlusal schemes and occlusal issues are the further determinants. Now moving on to the loading protocols. What are the decision making that influence the treatment approach? So as I've already discussed, ITI only and only supports the scientific documentation. So the first one is being the scientific documentation to the treatment approach. If we have good amount of treatment approach, if we have good amount of documentation, we are free to go with that approach. Second is the benefit to the patient, risk of the complication associated with that treatment approach, the treatment difficulty associated with that treatment, and the cost effectiveness. These are the 5 basic factors that influence the decision making in the treatment approaches by ITI. Now, if I talk about a single missing teeth, all right. So on the left hand side, we can see we have the decising factors like scientific documentation, treatment difficulty, benefit to the patient, complication, and cost effectiveness. As I've already mentioned, these are the things that influences the loading protocol. We can see for a single anterior missing teeth that lies in the edentulous, that lies in the aesthetic zone, the treatment difficulty is either in case of conventional loading or early loading is advanced, while cases of immediate loading, it is a complex case. The restoration of the missing teeth in the anterior region in the mouth is as a complicated structure, is a complicated and falls in advanced or a complex category that needs the need of an aesthetic outcome is paramount for many implant procedures. The simple survival of the implant and the restoration must be in harmony with the face and smile of the patient. It should mimic the lost teeth and regarding the color and optical properties. Achieving this goal requires a clinician to have a greater depth of knowledge, not only about the implant dentistry, as well as to the aesthetic dentistry as well. That is why if you talk about the conventional loading and the early loading, it is an advanced case, while in case of an immediate loading, it falls under the complex scenarios. Now, if I talk about the factors influencing loading protocol in an anterior missing teeth, it lies only and only as a complex case. The reason for this thing is the immediate restoration or any restoration lies in the complex scenario is the highest level of knowledge that is regarded with the soft tissue response is required. The over-contoured or the under-contoured provisional restorations can lead to an irreversible changes in the soft tissue form. In turn, that results in aesthetic compromises. While an excellent soft tissue response can be achieved with an immediate provisional restoration, such case should be taken only by an experienced, skilled, and a well-educated clinician because aesthetic risk is of prime importance. Now, if you talk about the posterior single missing teeth or a posterior distal extension case, we can see the conventional loading and the early loading are in a straightforward cases. We have good scientific documentation for both of them. But if we consider the immediate loading protocol for a single missing teeth or a distal extension cases, the immediate loading protocol, it is considered to be as an advanced case. Now, it is considered advanced only because additional care and attention to the details is required, because healing of the bone and surrounding soft tissue can be influenced by the quality of the restoration and management of the load. Now, Dr. Love has already spoken about the axial loading of implant. In cases of immediate loading, it should be completely axial load. There should be no sideways load onto the implants. Occlusal harmony is of prime importance, as the initial stability of the implant will diminish throughout the early weeks of healing. Occlusal load is capable of inducing undesirable movement in the implant during these phases, with a possibility of implant failure. Management of the load distribution through occlusal design and treatment technique requires a high level of skills. That is why these cases in immediate loading of single posterior tooth or a distal extension situations is classified as an advanced case. Now, moving on to the protocol for edentulous cases, edentulous being maxilla or edentulous being mandible. Processes for a maxillary removable processes or an overdenture. Now, moving on to this slide. In this slide, if you all can see on the left side, I have mentioned about the conventional loading, early loading, or the immediate loading. Okay, on the top of the restoration, we have implant prosthetic design. Okay, now there are different colors, the green color, yellow, and the red. Green color says the cases are clinically well documented. The yellow being says clinically documented, and the red being says clinically insufficiently documented. Now you can consider these things as a highway, a state highway. Clinically well documented cases, you can drive as fast as you can. For conventional loading, they say you can have a bar design without cantilever on 4 splintered processes. As you all can see on the top, we have 4 implants. They are joined by a bar supported region. Then we have 6 implants. They are loaded with a bar, joined by a bar. We have good clinically well documented case records. So conventional loading is allowed in these cases. While in the cases of the last 2, in which 4 implants with locator attachment or 6 implants with locator attachments are placed, they are clinically documented. So conventional loading is allowed, but with cautious. In cases of early loading, yellow in color, for bar and of 4 implants and bar for 6 implants, these are clinically documented. We have a good success rate. Okay, so we can proceed, but with cautious. The things that are given in red, ITI doesn't promote these things. And if done, proper risk management and patient consent is to be signed before proceeding to these things. So immediate restoration in maxillary arch with bar or with locator with any number of implants is clinically insignificantly documented. For fixed processes, we have another word that is added is scientifically and clinically validated. Okay, now these can be a conventional loading. Now, if you talk about the conventional loading on 4 implants with proper full arch distal cantilevers is clinically documented. Early loading is insufficiently documented, and immediate loading is also insufficiently documented. So if you are placing 4 implants, the conventional loading can be done, but immediate and early loading is not advisable. In cases of 6 implants, 4 anteriors and 2 posterior placement with full arch processes with a small amount of cantilever, it is scientifically validated. You all can go, you can proceed with this case blindly in conventional loading cases. With early loading, also with immediate loading, this is allowed. Final, if you talk about 8 implants and the processes is divided into segments of 3 implants each, this is the best scenario For conventional loading, for immediate loading also, this is a good scenario. You can proceed with this case also. Now, if you talk about the edentulous maxilla, edentulous mandible, in cases of edentulous mandible, the conventional loading protocol with 2 implants and a overdenture and a locator overdenture or a locator attachment is clinically and scientifically validated. You all can proceed with a conventional loading protocol with a bar or a locator, or with 4 implants with 4 locator attachments. Early loading is well documented, can be proceed, but immediate restorations with 2 locator attachment or a 2 ball attachment is not advisable. Also, the immediate loading protocols with a bar or 4 locator attachments is clinically documented, can be proceeded, but with cautious. The same thing goes with the fixed processes. A fixed 4-unit processes is clinically well documented for conventional loading, but a 6-unit processes with a posterior cantilevers is scientifically validated. Also, with 6 implants with no distal cantilevers is the best validated procedure by ITI. Immediate loading is also allowed, but the cantilevers are to be placed with cautious. With this thing, I would like to end my presentation and would like to call our head of the department, Dr. Kshitij sir, to proceed with the further.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Anshuman, for your presentation. I would also like to thank our other presenters, Dr. Abhinav, Dr. Love Bhatia, Dr. Anshuman, for your presentation. I know it's a long session, and being online, it actually at times can be a little exhausting. So I'm coming almost to the end of the thing, and I'll be directly sharing with you the conclusion part, and which I'll be talking to you about firstly, I'll be talking to you about the Albertson criteria, which you all know, the criteria which basically determines the success or the failure of an implant. So as we all know, the first criteria which the Albertson criteria suggests is that that an individual or an unattached implant is immobile when tested clinically. The second criteria, as it suggests, is that a radiograph does not present any evidence or peri-implant radiolucency. And the third criteria, as we know, is there should be less than 0.2 mm of bone loss annually after the first year of implant service. The fourth criteria, as it suggests, is that there should be any absence, characterized by any absence of persistent and irreversible signs and symptoms such as pain, infection, neuropathies, paresthesia, or violation of the mandibular canal. That, in context with the above 4 criteria, which I mentioned, a successful rate of 85% of the implants at the end of a 5-year period is the observation period, and about 80% at the end of the 10-year period to be the minimum criteria. Now, this is pleased to be noted that this is the minimum criteria as suggested by Albertson. We must ideally aim for a much higher success rate. Now, coming to almost the end part, the success and the failure of an implant is difficult to describe as the success and criteria required for a tooth. The range from health to disease is similar in both conditions. The primary criteria for assessing implant quality are pain, mobility. The presence of either factors greatly compromises the implant, and removal is usually indicated. Now, probing depth may be related to presence of a local disease or a pre-existing tissue thickness before the implant was inserted. Increasing probing depth is more diagnostic and signifies bone loss. It may also signify gingival hyperplasia or hypertrophy. Now, bone loss is usually best evaluated with a probing rather than, I would say, a radiograph. The most common cause of the bone loss that we see in the first few years following an implant is an exaggerated force on or the stress that is being created. So we must take into consideration the occlusion that we have incorporated in the prosthesis. Now, implant failure is easier to describe and may consist of a variety of factors. Any pain, vertical mobility, uncontrolled progressive bone loss, or generalized or periapical radiolucency may warrant an implant removal. Now, we must also take into consideration the main topic that we shared about our loading protocol that we shared today. So, apart from the classical treatment planning that we have gone through, if we fail to follow our loading protocols given by the various authors, and so we may end up in failure. Now, implants, as we know, are becoming an integral part of a modern day society. Now, when diagnostic protocols involve prosthodontically driven implantology, the biomechanical, technical, aesthetic compromises are circumvented. Careful planning, evaluation of all diagnostic aids, mock wax up, and using surgical guides in combination with hard and soft tissue augmentation, if required, helps to accurately locate implant fixture regarding depth, angulation. And along with the critical, which is the loading protocol that we follow, we can give an highly aesthetic and a biomechanical success to implant prosthesis. Now that brings an end to our pre-conference course. I would now request if there are any questions from your end, so we can answer you all. So over to the moderators now. Over to the moderators now. Yes, thank you so much.